Shalom, all praises to Yahawah, bahasham, Yahawashi, bahasham, Racha, Kodash. Double honor to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone that rule well, delivering the word and doctrine. Shalom, meaning peace. May that be unto the elect of the nation of Israel. And Salachia, this is an apology video. I completely went off at camp this week, and I basically said that the great horn was Antiochus Epiphanes, when that is not the case. The little horn would be Antiochus or Antiochus. Okay, so this is Daniel 8, and we'll start from verse 5. And as I was considering, behold, an he-goat came from the west on the face of the whole earth, and touched not the ground, and the goat had a notable horn between his eyes. And he came to the ram that had two horns, which, it explains it later, which I had seen standing before the river, and run unto him in the fury of his power. We'll go down to verse 20. The ram which thou sawest having two horns are the kings of Media and Persia. Right, in verse 21. And the rough goat is the king of Grecia, and the great horn that is between his eyes is the first king. Right, so you go up now, and we'll read back in verse 7. And I saw him close unto the ram, and he was moved with choler against him, and smote the ram, and brake his two horns, and there was no power in the ram to stand before him, but he cast him down to the ground, and stamped upon him, and there was none that could deliver the ram out of his hand. Therefore the he-goat was very great, and when he was strong, the great horn was broken, for it came four noble ones towards the four winds of heaven. Right, and when you go into this, obviously after Alexander, in fact we'll get it in the Apocrypha. This is Maccabees, First Maccabees chapter 1, and we'll start from the top. And it happened after that Alexander, son of Philip the Macedonian, who came out of the land of Chetim, had smitten Darius, king of the Persians and Medes, that he reigned in his stead first over Greece. Yeah, so obviously it says that. It says, verse 21, and the rough goat is the king of Grecia, and the great horn that is between his eyes is the first king. Right, so who was the first king? So verse 2, and made many wars, and won many strongholds, and slew the kings of the earth, and he went through to the ends of the earth, and took spoils of many nations, insomuch that the earth was quiet before him, whereupon he was exalted, and his heart was lifted up. And he gathered a mighty strong host, and ruled over countries and nations and kings, who became tributaries unto him, Israel being one of them. And after all these things, he fell sick, and perceived that he should die. Wherefore he called his servants, such as were honourable, and had been brought up with him from his youth, and parted his kingdom among them while he was yet alive. So Alexander reigned 12 years, and then died, and his servants bare rule, every one in his place. Right, and we'll look at who they are. Alright, so this is secular history. Wars of the Diadochi, or wars of Alexander's successors, were a series of conflicts that were fought between the generals of Alexander the Great, known as the Diadochi, over who would rule his empire following his death. Right, so his successors are known as this. So the fighting occurred between 322 and 281 BC. So you see that. And you see how swiftly he conquered this region. It was crazy, man. It was all about a part of prophecy. Let's read some of the background. So it said, Alexander died on June the 10th, 322 BC, leaving behind an empire that stretched from Macedon, which is in Greece, and the rest of Greece in Europe to the Indus Valley in South Asia. The empire had no clear successor, with the Argead family at this point consisting of Alexander's mentally disabled half-brother Arrhidaeus, his unborn son Alexander, and his reputed illegitimate son Heracles, and so on and so forth. What we want to find is what happened. There is. Alexander's death was the catalyst for the disagreements that ensued between his former generals, resulting in a succession crisis. Right, I found a part that touches on the top four. So we've got, as ambitious successors were being eliminated one by one, Cassander assassinated Alexander, the fourth in 311 BCE. Yeah, I'm worse at Roman numerals than Arabic numerals. It says, delivering the final blow to Alexander's bloodline. Before the assassination, the greatest Diadochi of the time had signed a peace treaty recognizing the status quo of 4 separate kingdoms. Okay, 4 generals, 4 separate kingdoms. It says Ptolemy in Egypt, Antigonus in the whole of Asia, Cassander in Europe, Macedon and Thessaly, and Lysimachus in Thrace. Seleucus was left out of the treaty but maintained Babylon, of which he was the satrap, which is an ancient definition here. It says the Achaemenid Empire was the ancient empire whose... Let's just get straight to the point now. Right, satrap.
Satrap.
A provincial governor in the ancient Persian Empire. Any subordinate or local ruler. Okay, cool. So that's what we're going to get, the four main ones there. So Ptolemy, Antigonus, Cassander, Lysimachus, and Seleucus was left out of that treaty there. So going back into this, first Maccabees 1 and 8, and his servants bear rule, everyone in his place, and after his death they all put crowns upon themselves, so did their sons after them many years, and evils were multiplied in the earth. Right, because this was the time that E was really raising up. It said, and there came out of one of them a wicked root, Antiochus, surnamed Epiphanes, a son of Antiochus the king, who had been an hostage at Rome, and he reigned in the 137th year of the kingdom of the Greeks. In those days went out of Israel wicked men who persuaded many, saying, let us go and make a covenant with the heathen that are round about us, for since we departed from them we have had much sorrow. Right. So that's really the start of Hellenization. The Gentiles versus the Gentiles. So now we'll go back into Daniel 8 with that understanding. So out of them came a wicked root, Antiochus. So it says, we'll start with Daniel 8 and 7. Now we've read that. Daniel 8 and 8. Therefore the he-goat waxed very great, and when he was strong the great horn was broken, and for it came up 4 notable ones towards the 4 winds of heaven. So we've read about the top 4. Who they were: Lysimachus, Cassander, Ptolemy, and Antigonus. And then you have Seleucus that was left out of it. It says, and out of one of them came forth a little horn, which waxed exceeding great toward the south, and toward the east, and toward the pleasant land. Right, so that's 3 locations. The pleasant land is of course Jerusalem, the Holy Land. So this is on the article of Britannica for Antiochus IV Epiphanes. It says the Greeks and those friendly towards them were united into the community of Antiochans. The worship of, they've put Yahweh, but the true name of the Heavenly Father is Yahawah, and of all Jewish rites were forbidden on pain of death. In the temple, an altar to Zeus Olympius was erected, and sacrifices were to be made at the feet of an idol in the image of the king. Against the desecration, and this is going into the time of the Maccabees, of course, Judas Maccabeus, which is where you get that term, Maccaba, meaning a hammer, leader of the anti-Greek Jews, led the aroused Hasidians in a guerrilla war and several times defeated the generals Antiochus had commissioned to deal with the uprising. Right, the main part to be taken into this was the sacrifices were to be made. And they did the same thing to other. That was their stamping their territory. They were like tagging a wall on a major scale, of course. Right, so we read Daniel 8 and 8 again. Therefore the he-goat waxed very great, and when he was strong, the great horn was broken, for it came at four notable ones towards the four winds of heaven, and out of one of them came forth a little horn, which waxed exceeding great toward the south, and toward the east, and toward the pleasant land. Right, and when you read in full, you can look it up. Antiochus was the top, Greek pusher. He was the chief Hellenizer, especially coming against Jerusalem and the Israelites. Verse 8. And when I say Jerusalem and the Israelites, I mean Jerusalem, the land, and the people, the Israelites. You could also say Jerusalem is a people. Verse 9. And out of one of them came forth a little horn, which waxed exceeding great, toward the south, and toward the east, and toward the pleasant land. And it waxed great even to the host of heaven. And it cast some of the host of the stars to the ground, and stamped upon them. Right, and Israel, is known as that. And you read in Psalm 19, it says, the heavens declare the glory of the Most High, and the firmament sheweth his handiwork. Day unto day uttereth speech, and night unto night sheweth knowledge. Right, and the host of heaven. For example, in Joseph's dream, the 12 sons of Jacob were all represented in that dream. Joseph obviously having that dream. Let's pull it. But before that, Psalm 19, that's going into the preaching of the gospel going out. Their line was going out into the whole earth. Right? That's talking about the word going out, the word of the Lord. By what? By the preacher. Like it's in Romans 10 and 17. How can they heard except there's been a preacher? Right, so we're going to get multiple precepts to prove the point. This is Genesis 31 and 1. So Genesis 37 and verse 5. And Joseph dreamed a dream, and he told it to his brethren, and they hated him yet the more. And he said unto them, Hear, I pray you, this dream which I have dreamed. For behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and lo, my sheaf arose, and also stood upright, and behold, your sheaves stood round about, and made obeisance to my sheaf. And his brethren said to him, Shalt thou indeed reign over us, or shalt thou indeed have dominion over us? And they hated him yet the more for his dreams and for his words. And he dreamed yet another dream. Alright, now this is the point about the stars. And he dreamed yet another dream, and told it to his brethren, and said, Behold, I have dreamed a dream more, and behold, the sun and the moon and the 11 stars made obeisance to me. Right, because he's that 12th star. Right, so the host of heaven, the stars obviously dwell in the firmament. Right, so this likeness is of course the Israelites. So who cast the Israelites down in a great manner? Antiochus, as you can read about in the book of Maccabees. Daniel 8 and verse, start 10 again. And it waxed great even to the host of heaven, and it cast down some of the hosts and of the stars to the ground, and stamped upon them. Yea, he magnified himself even to the prince of the host, and by him the daily sacrifice was taken away. Right, so who set up an idol, and made the temple unto Zeus? So then by him the daily sacrifice was taken away, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down. This is 1 Maccabees 1:41. Moreover, King Antiochus wrote to his whole kingdom that all should be one people, and everyone should leave his laws. So all the heathen agreed according to the commandment of the king. Yea, many also of the Israelites consented to his religion, and sacrificed unto idols, and profaned the Sabbath. For the king had sent letters by messengers unto Jerusalem and the cities of Judah, that they should follow the strange laws of the land. Right, so they all wanted to be one. We should all be one people, right? But you stop having your culture. And it sounds familiar. Verse 45, and forbid burnt offerings and sacrifice and drink offerings in the temple, and that they should profane the Sabbath days and festival days, and pollute the sanctuary and the holy people, and set up altars and groves and chapels of idols, and sacrifice swine's flesh and unclean beasts, that they should also leave their children uncircumcised, and make their souls abominable with all manner of uncleanness and profanation, to the end they might forget the law and change all the ordinances. And whosoever would not do according to the commandment of the king, he said he should die. Verse 51, in the selfsame manner wrote he to his whole kingdom, and appointed overseers over all the people, commanding the cities of Judah to sacrifice city by city. Then many of the people were gathered unto them, to wit every one that forsook the law, and so they committed evils in the land, and drove the Israelites into secret places, even wheresoever they could flee for succor. Now the 15th day of the month Caslu, in the 145th year, they set up the abomination of desolation upon the altar, and builded idols throughout the cities of Judah on every side, and burned incense at the doors of their houses and in the streets. Right, so the abomination of desolation upon the altar was, unto an idol. And this is what's spoken about in Daniel, the 8th chapter. Now this is why you ask, well, why is the Apocrypha not included? Right, because you see, this is what was happening. This was the brutal affliction and persecution the Israelites went through under the Greek occupation. Okay, so this is why there was neither Jew nor Greek. It tells you in 2 Maccabees how they couldn't keep the Sabbath days or ancient fasts, or profess themselves at all to be a Jew. So what did they call themselves? They took on Greek culture. They were no longer Jews, they called themselves Greeks. So this is an understanding of the Gentiles. Right, it says, verse 11, yea, magnified himself even to the prince of the host, and by him the daily sacrifice was taken away, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down, and an host was given him against the daily sacrifice by reason of transgression, and it cast down the truth to the ground, and it practiced and prospered. Right, so the abomination of desolation was done in that time, and it was done in 70 AD. The period of 66 to 74 AD is the falling away of 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. Right, the apostasia, when the Israelites were again pushed out of their land, were conquered by the same ease. Right, the same ease where you got these guys saying that they're Japheth. When it says E is the end of the world, coincidentally, it's the same people that the Greeks, the Romans, and are ruling now in the end time. But they're not E. The Saudis are gonna rise up. That's ridiculous, man. Anyway, now Daniel 8 and verse 21 again. And the rough goat is the king of Grecia, and the great horn that is between his eyes is the first king. So who's the first king? I should have known. But I obviously got confused, and therefore confused the audience and the brothers. So Salachia. Verse 22. Now that being broken, whereas 4 stood up for it, 4 kingdoms shall stand up out of the nation, but not in his power. Right, and that's going into what? The 4 generals. Now we skip up, we'll read about and emphasize one point. So Daniel 8:8 and 8 and 9. Therefore the he-goat waxed very great, and when he was strong, the great horn was broken, for it came up 4 notable ones toward the 4 winds of the heaven. So the great horn is Alexander. He was broken, he died, and then his nobles rose up in the place. You had the wars of the Diadochi, quite a few. They all went back and forth, and then out of them the 4 major ones rose up, and then it says, and out of them. So verse 9 now. And out of one of them came forth a little horn, which waxed exceeding great toward the south, and toward the east, and toward the pleasant land, Jerusalem. And it waxed great even to the host of heaven, and it cast some of the host and of the stars to the ground, and stamped upon them. Right, so the great horn is Alexander, the little horn is Antiochus. So please forgive me for that. Right, so I'll leave it there. I pray it was edifying. Again, Salachia. Double honor to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone that rule well and labor in the word and doctrine. Shalom. And halalyam la Yahawah, bahasham Yahawashi, bahasham Qudash.